Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. If you're looking for the ultimate guide on Yuzuha, well, that's probably why you clicked on this video, which will hopefully teach you everything you need to know about Yuzuha.
You know what you're missing? A porcelain amulet! Wanna get one?
Yuzuha, an S-rank physical support Tanuki, does what any Tanuki does best. She provides prosperity and fortune, endless mischief and pranks, and of course what Tanukis are most well known for, a 1200 attack buff with 15% bonus damage and up to 20% anomaly plus disorder damage and amplification. Fun fact, Tanukis are known for their large scrotums, where such large meat marbles symbolize prosperity and good fortune. While Yuzuha doesn't appear to have these danglers of prosperity, she makes up for it with her other assets. This video was filmed on the early access server and is not indicative of the final product. There may be some changes on release, so be sure to check the comments down below to see if there are any. As usual, we'll go over her kit, best drives and stats, wenjins, teams, Mindscapes, a showcase, and finally my opinion on insert character here. Alright, Yuzuha's kit can be incredibly simple or incredibly complex, so we'll do both. As a wise philosopher once said, hit bad guy with EX special, sometime defensive assist. There you go, that's how you use her, end of the guide. Now let's actually see what's going on in more detail. Yuzuha specializes in providing very large and substantial buffs to anomaly teams as well as applying a significant amount of anomaly herself. Living up to her Tanuki lore of being able to shapeshift, Yuzuha is able to change what element she applies some of her anomaly for, to match one of her teammates' elements. This makes her a very flexible and powerful support for anomaly teams of any element. We're actually going to start off with her EX special, since the rest of her kit revolves around, well, that. Using her EX special applies the Sweet Scare state to the enemy and also provides the Tanuki Wish buff to your team. You just have to hit the enemy with her EX special or ultimate, but most of the time EX special, in order to activate this additional ability, which are these additional DOT effects or damage over time effects. And we can see here that's actually building up the physical anomaly gauge. And what if we actually hit the enemy with an electric attack? We can now see that it is now dealing electric anomaly ticks, building up the electric anomaly gauge. So not only does she apply, of course, physical anomaly, she also applies the anomaly of the element of the next character to deal damage that matches their elements. In this case, in this example, I used Yanagi. But wait, that's not all, because when she's off field, if an ally hits the enemy, she will consume one of her sugar points, and she will perform this Aftershock Attack hard candy shot. This has an 8-second cooldown, and a bit confusingly, she'll also perform Sugar Burst Sparkles Max with Hard Candy Shot versus an enemy affected by the Sweet Scare state, but basically just know that most of the time, this Aftershock Attack includes both Hard Candy and Sugar Burst Sparkles Max. Sugar Burst Sparkles Max will also apply Anomaly matching the converted element, so in this example, it applies Electric Anomaly. Now this next part is a bit advanced, but I'll try my best to keep it simple. Both Sugar Burst Sparkles and Sugar Burst Sparkles Max, while they do apply Anomaly, they don't contribute towards the Anomaly damage formula. As an example, let's say Rina's shock would do 30,000 damage per tick. Then let's say Yanagi's shock would do 60,000 damage per tick. If both Rina and Yanagi apply 50% of shock anomaly to the enemy, the shock would deal 45,000 damage per tick. However, the anomaly Yuzuha applies through her sugar bursts don't actually contribute to the formula, which FYI is also how Bangbu anomaly works, but as such, regardless of how much electric anomaly is applied by Yuzuha, the shock will only consider Yanagi's stats, and in this example, it would deal 60,000 damage per tick. Now, one more fun little note about Yuzuha's off-field anomaly application is that it's actually impossible for Yuzuha to activate non-assault anomalies. So yeah, that about covers it just for the Sweet Scare debuff on the enemies. Let's move on to the next thing that her EX special provides, the Tanuki Wish buff. But she also provides the entire team up to 1200 attack, as well as up to 15% additional damage. And where is that attack buff coming from? Well, basically when she hits an enemy with her EX special or ultimate, then her entire team will get the Tanuki Wish, which grants an attack buff equal to 40% of Yuzuha's attack. So basically, if you have 3,000 attack on Yuzuha prior to going into combat, she'll provide the maximum 1,200 attack buff. Not only that, but it also provides 15% bonus damage, and this buff lasts for 40 seconds. So basically, she'll have 100% uptime on this Tanuki Wish buff. And if you fulfill Yuzuha's additional ability, which requires an Anomaly agent on her team or someone from the Spook Squad faction, yes, Yuzuha is very spooky. The Tanuki Wish also provides anomaly-related buffs, scaling off of her Anomaly Mastery stat. Basically, this can provide up to 20% anomaly application rate and 20% anomaly and disorder damage, maxing out when Yuzuha has 200 anomaly mastery. Unlike the attack buff though, this buff is based on her anomaly mastery stat while in combat. So yeah, a bit confusing, but honestly you don't need to worry too much about this, but it's good to know. Okay, so we now know the core of her kit. Let's talk about some of her interesting additional options. Yuzuha actually has 2 different EX specials. The first version is the regular version, which is a bit slow, but perfectly usable when you need to apply this sweet scare state onto the enemy. The second version is much faster, but can only be performed after certain options, like dodge counter, quick assist follow-ups, and perfect dodge. Both EX specials have their uses, and it honestly doesn't matter too much which one you use. You'll often use the first version for when the enemy isn't attacking, and meanwhile you'll often use the second faster version after you perform an assist follow-up with Yuzuha. There is a neat little trick though which you can do with her EX special. Since her EX special triggers quick assist to the next character, and well, when you quick assist to the next character, this will generally determine what element will switch her Sugar Burst Sparkles to. However, you can actually swap to the previous character before her EX special hits, aka before the quick assist activates. This way you can actually switch Yuzuha's element to the previous character. Alternatively, if you're on mobile, you can perform a double swap, since I don't believe there's a shortcut or button for swapping to the previous character, but yeah, this just gives you more control over what element you want Yuzuha to apply, which is absolutely fantastic. Next we have Yuzuha's various parries and assists. Yuzuha can use her hold basic to enter this defensive umbrella stance, which allows her to go into a defensive umbrella stance and parry the enemy's attack. So we can see here that we'll just do this, hold that, and we can parry it and follow it up with an assist follow-up attack. This umbrella parry typically needs to be preemptively done though, because it does take around a second or so for the umbrella to come out from her basic one. Yuzuha actually also has 2 assist follow-ups as well. If you press the attack button right after performing a defensive assist or parry, she'll perform this faster version, the epically named We Have Cookies. Alternatively, if you wait a bit for this golden glint to appear, you can then perform the assist follow-up Stuffed Hard Candy Shot. Stuffed Hard Candy Shot also blasts the enemy with a bonus Sugar Burst Sparkles Max, therefore applying a bit of Yuzuha's converted element as anomaly as well. Both assist follow-ups have their uses, with We Have Cookies simply being faster, and with Stuffed Hard Candy Shot plus Sugar Burst Sparkles Max dealing a bit more of everything, damage, daze, as well as anomaly. Of course, at the cost of needing more field time. Honestly, for most of us, it doesn't matter too much which one you use. Although generally speaking, I think the Stuffed Hard Candy Shot tends to be the way to go, but it's good to know what each of them do and to know that you have options. Phew, okay, that covers most of her kit, with one last bit that I probably should have talked about earlier. It's her Sugar Point generation. Remember those things that she needs to perform her off-field Aftershock attacks? And the way that she generates these is pretty simple. She generates 2 with her EX special, she generates 1 from her chain attack, she generates 2 from her ultimate, and she generates 1 from her defensive assist. Then we have her chain attack, which is pretty straightforward. It just generates a sugar point and provides a quick assist to the next character. Her ultimate also simply generates 2 sugar points, provides the off-the-shelf support ultimate buff of 25 energy to her teammates, and provides a quick assist to the next character. Her ultimate though also applies Sweet Scare State to the enemy and the Tanuki Wish buff to your team, similar to her EX special, and it's a good alternative for refreshing and reapplying those things. Alright, I almost forgot about this little guy, but her Tanuki friend will occasionally deal some negligible damage while Yuzuha is off field, helpful for maintaining a stack on the Kaboom the cannon, which is nice, and that's honestly about the only thing I can think of that our Tanuki friend actually provides with its attacks. In total, Yuzuha provides the following buffs. She provides up to a 1200 attack buff, 15% bonus damage. She provides up to 20% anomaly buildup for the entire team, and up to 20% anomaly and disorder damage for the entire team. She also provides 25 energy for teammates when she uses her ultimate because she's a support character, and she provides good physical anomaly application herself. Finally, she provides off-field teammates elemental anomaly application without diluting their anomaly damage, and she provides whatever drive set that she equips buffs, which when needed is typically around 15 to 24% bonus damage. She also surprisingly provides a decent amount of daze, despite her low impact stat, thanks to her very high daze multiplier on defensive assist, as well as her hold basic defensive assist. And of course, she can provide whatever support Wenjin buff that she has equipped, which if you have her signature weapon, equates to 60 anomaly proficiency to the team, or many other buffs that the other support Wenjins can provide. As you can see, Yuzuha provides honestly a comical amount of buffs, making her absolutely excellent for buffing anomaly related teams. And yeah, that about covers it for her kit. Despite all that yapping, ultimately, to use her, you just use her EX special to tag enemies with Sweet Scare and perform some defensive assists here and there for the day's output, as well as for the additional sugar points when needed. For Yuzuha's talent priority, prioritize her core above all else, and then her basics, specials, chain and ultimates, and assists. And lastly, her dash attacks. We've made it to the math section of this video, starting with Yuzuha's drives and stats. And ironically, her calcs are obscenely complicated for ultimately the simplest builds and takeaways. Thumbs up this video for over 8,000 Excel cells just to tell us what we all suspected. And before continuing, I did want to include a disclaimer that calculating full team anomaly performance is extremely difficult, and it is much more of an estimation in comparison to traditional attackers. I do feel good enough though about these calculations to present them to you, but please keep this in mind that this is more so than usual guidelines based on mathematical estimations and also my personal advice. Anyway, Yuzuha's top priority is to hit 3000 attack on her stat page before entering combat to maximize her 1200 attack buff from her core passive. She also wants as much anomaly mastery as she can get to potentially max out the anomaly related buffs. Just keep in mind that the attack buff that Yuzuha provides is based on her pre-combat attack stat, whereas her anomaly buffs are based on her combat anomaly mastery stat. Yes, a bit confusing, but this is worth knowing. As such, for the main stats, for around 97% of the player base, I personally recommend the following main stat setup. Use attack percent in slot 4, attack percent in slot 5, and anomaly mastery in slot 6. There is, in my opinion, very little reason to go with any other combination of main stats, as this combination works with pretty much any team that she's on and helps the most with maximizing the buffs that she provides. While there are some combinations that can potentially improve her damage by a bit, Yuzuha's stats tend to make up a very small amount of her team's damage distribution. As for the 2-piece set bonus, the clear winner is the Phaethon's Melody, which provides 8% anomaly mastery. With, for example, both slot 6 anomaly mastery main stat and the 2-piece Phaethon's Melody, this puts her at 171 anomaly mastery. Then, if you use her signature Wenjin, thanks to its 30 anomaly mastery during combat, she'll have 201 anomaly mastery during combat to maximize her additional abilities anomaly buffs. Keep in mind though that without her signature Wenjin, and thus you'd have 171 anomaly mastery, this is perfectly fine, as you're still getting 17.1% of the maximum 20% buff, which is still fantastic. For the 4-piece set, you can choose between the Swing Jazz, the Proto Punk, and the Astral Voice. My favorite set out of these options is the 4-piece Swing Jazz, as you have 100% uptime on the Swing Jazz's buff during the enemy's stun window, and the extra energy regen also doesn't hurt. However, the Proto Punk generally has better uptime outside of stun windows, but is worse uptime during stun windows. Also, it doesn't have the extra energy regen, which honestly isn't a huge issue, but extra energy provides additional flexibility. and is just of course generally preferred. Finally, the Astral Voice is an okay choice, and with careful planning or certain teammates, this can boost a single DPS's damage more than either of the aforementioned options. Also, the 2-piece set bonus, which provides 10% attack, can allow for less attack percent substat rolls to reach 3000 attack. Granted, Yuzuha doesn't give very many quick assists on her own, so do keep that in mind. So yeah, any of these 3 sets can work, with my personal overall most recommended set being the 4-piece Swing Jazz. As for substats, the priority is to go for attack percent rolls and flat attack as well until she reaches 3000 pre-combat attack. This will have the most impact on her team's DPS. Generally speaking, assuming you have around 5 flat attack rolls throughout your drives, and with the 4-piece Swing Jazz plus 2-piece Faithin's Melody equipped, you'll need around 6 to 11 attack percent rolls, depending on your Wenjin, to reach 3000 attack. As we can see though, any attack over 3000 does very little for her team's DPS, because she frankly does very little damage. And besides attack rolls up to 3000 attack, in my opinion, the other substats are largely useless, although Anomaly Proficiency doesn't hurt, as that can improve her assaults, and for certain teammates, like with Vivian's occasional Feather Bloom or Jane's crit assaults, it can help a tiny bit. So yeah, prioritize attack percent rolls until 3000 attack, and once you use 3000 attack, honestly don't worry about her substats unless you're really trying to squeeze out every last bit of damage possible. As for some technically viable options, just to be thorough, you can use a different 2-piece set other than the Faithin's Melody, like the Hormone Punk, to make reaching 3000 attack a bit easier, or the 2-piece Swing Jazz if you don't use the 4-piece Swing Jazz for more energy. But I personally think there aren't really any major benefits to these options. Some other more hipster options include Impact in slot 6, as Yuzuha can output a decent amount of days. But again, I don't recommend deviating from the main setup unless you know exactly what you're doing and you're min-maxing for some very specific interactions. Finally, you can technically use the 4-piece Freedom Blues, but she can only improve physical damage anomaly application with this set, so it's only feasible with Jane, Piper, or for providing assaults for various passives like the Fanged Metal, Drive Set, and Nekomata. But yeah, all this stuff is pretty niche, and I personally don't recommend it, but hey, here are just some ideas for those of you hipsters out there, and it's your account, and don't let some vitamin D deficient man like myself in the basement tell you what to do. For Yuzuha's Wenjins, I'll eventually show you 2 charts to highlight the difference in performance for Yuzuha's Wenjins based on team. I did calcs for a Miyabi plus Yanagi team and for a Vivian plus Yanagi team, and you'll see why I did that soon enough. Starting with the Miyabi plus Yanagi team, Yuzuha's signature Wenjin, the Tanuki Morphosis, is surprisingly barely her best option. The Tanuki Morphosis provides energy regen as a secondary stat, and also provides 30 Anomaly Mastery to Yuzuha during combat, as well as 60 Anomaly Proficiency to the entire team. Miyabi, while she does benefit from the Anomaly Proficiency stat, doesn't benefit from it as much as other Anomaly agents, since Miyabi does most of her damage through crit scaling attacks. As such, the Weeping Cradle, even at upgrade 1, is only theoretically around 1 to 2% worse than the Tanuki Morphosis for a Miyabi team. The Weeping Cradle works nearly perfectly on Yuzuha thanks to her sugar damage overtime ticks, constantly activating the Weeping Cradle's buffs, effectively having 100% uptime on the max buff that the Weeping Cradle provides. One minor note that I figured I'd mention is that the energy regen passive doesn't work while Yuzuha is on field performing defensive assists, or even when Yuzuha is performing her Aftershock Attack. Despite this though, she's off field for about half of the time, I would say, which leads to some pretty decent value from the energy regen from the Weeping Cradle. With the 4-piece Swing Jazz's 20% energy regen, Yuzuha is still able to maintain 100% uptime on her elemental skill's Sweet Scare State against the enemy, since it lasts for about 40 seconds and Yuzuha should get enough energy for an EX special every 35 seconds or so. Honestly, I'm yapping a bit too much about this, but the great thing about the Weeping Cradle is that it being a standard Wenjin means that you can work towards upgrades on this thing, or I guess unintentionally if you lose the Wenjin pulls, and after a couple of dupes, it should be even better than her signature Wenjin, specifically for a Miyabi team. Alternatively, another great option is the Kaboom the Cannon. Kaboom the Cannon is a common 4-star support Wenjin that provides a mega attack buff when each character or ally hits the enemy. and with each ally providing a separate stack, with each stack lasting for 8 seconds. So yeah, remember our raccoon buddy's seemingly useless coordinated attacks? Well, he actually provides a stack on this Wenjin with decent uptime. And between the raccoon and the Bangbu, you'll have pretty solid uptime on this Wenjin, making it a fantastic free-to-play friendly option. And at upgrade 5, it isn't that far behind the Weeping Cradle, or even her signature Wenjin for a Miyabi team. One minor issue with the Kaboom the Cannon though is that you'll need more attack percent rolls to reach 3000 attack due to its lower base attack, but this is still a very feasible amount of attack percent rolls to obtain. Next we have the Battle Pass Wenjin, the Unfettered Game Ball, which of course can work as well, as you'll generally use an agent that hits the enemy with its weakness, and Yuzuha can match that element, therefore activating the crit rate buff of the Unfettered Game Ball. It is worth noting that the Unfettered Game Ball will perform a bit better than what's shown on this list for a pure attack and crit scaling team, which of course Yanagi is not, and I guess technically Miyabi is not either. As we can see though, especially for a Miyabi team, Yuzuha's signature Wenjin, the Tanuki Morphosis, is far from necessary. And honestly, the Weeping Cradle is just fine. Now really quickly, I also wanted to show you my calculations for a Vivian plus Yanagi team. Because we're kicking Miyabi out of this team for being too short, with Vivian as well as Yanagi who strongly prefer Anomaly Proficiency, the Tanuki Morphosis does better for this team than for Miyabi, performing around 7% better than the Weeping Cradle. Still, some upgrades on the Weeping Cradle will close the gap, and the Kaboom the Cannon is still perfectly usable even with Vivian. Ultimately, Yuzuha actually has some fantastic free-to-play friendly Wenjin options, and that's probably why they put in additional effort into making her Wenjin's drip look better than usual. And me personally, I actually care more about drip than doing a few more percentage points of damage, so I'm going to be pulling for her signature Wenjin, but yeah. Up next, we have Yuzuha's Mindscapes. And Investment Priority. Yuzuha's Mindscape 1 is actually pretty solid, providing 30 energy when she enters the battlefield at the beginning of the fight, and every 180 seconds after that for what it's worth. This 30 energy makes it so she doesn't have to whack the enemy a bunch at the beginning of Deadly Assault and also some other game modes, allowing her to instead immediately use her EX special, thus saving you a few seconds at the beginning of the fight. Not only that, but all enemies affected by her Sweet Scare state have their all attribute resistance reduced by 10%. And the anomaly related buffs are also improved by 30%, going up to a maximum of 26% instead of the standard 20%. Given how Yuzuha has fantastic free-to-play friendly Wenjin options in both the Weeping Cradle and the Kaboom the Cannon, I actually do recommend her Mindscape 1 over her signature Wenjin due to both the quality of life of opening up the fight with her EX special, as well as the larger team damage performance gain of around 13% thanks to the buffs to the team's damage that this thing provides. Now personally, as I mentioned earlier, I'm more vain, so I'm going for Yuzuha's signature Wenjin for the glowy hair, but in terms of my meta recommendation, I actually think her Mindscape 1 is a bit better overall. Okay, now as for Yuzuha's Mindscape 2, honestly, more testing needs to be done, and it's really hard to calculate it properly, but what it does is that it provides 15% bonus damage and 15% anomaly buildup rate to the team. And I think it basically provides a free chain attack to whatever character you want, basically once every 20 seconds. Chain attacks tend to have very solid DPS and anomaly application. Also, her Mindscape 2 reduces the cooldown of her Aftershock Attack, which means more secondary elemental application. Overall, this looks like a great Mindscape, although I gotta be honest, it's pretty difficult to calculate the exact effects, and just based on my gut feeling, it probably performs a bit better than my calcs have it here. Mindscape 3 adds 2 levels to her talents, which is honestly a joke. Mindscape 4 improves the damage and anomaly application of her assist follow-ups and also activates quick assists from those assist follow-ups. Mindscape 5 is another expensive joke, adding another 2 levels to her talents, and Mindscape 6 allows her to hold her assist follow-up or something, shooting some additional candy, and more importantly increases the disorder multiplier by about 315%. Additive, I'm assuming, and Yuzuha should apply a lot more secondary elemental anomaly application. This one is another one that's very difficult to calculate and requires much more testing, so please take it with a giant grain of salt. Overall though, I think going for her Mindscape 1 and potentially even Mindscape 2 before her signature Wenjin is probably the way to go, at least from a meta perspective. After that, I recommend her Wenjin, then her Mindscapes 3 through 5 are very expensive and are just stepping stones for her Mindscape 6, which can provide some interesting options that will require a lot of additional testing by those few Bitcoin billionaires out there. Up next are Yuzuha's teams. Before continuing, generally speaking, you should put Yuzuha before the character whose element you want her to apply, as she'll typically quick assist to that next character, and that quick assist will likely determine the element which her skill will inherit. Anyway, Yuzuha, as we can clearly see, is designed to support anomaly-related teams. You can pretty much mix and match almost any anomaly characters with Yuzuha to great effect. For example, she feels fantastic with Miyabi. The extra anomaly that she applies is immensely helpful for generating Miyabi's blue balls. Most anomaly agents work well for the last slot, with Yanagi and Vivian standing out to me. There's also no reason why Yuzuha can't work in a mono ice kind of team with Lycaon as an example, where Yuzuha can help apply ice for Lycaon. Of course, mixing and matching other anomaly agents like Bernice, Jane, Grace, and even Piper will all perform quite well with Yuzuha. You can even do double support for a hyper anomaly DPS like Yanagi as an example. Okay, now what about non-anomaly teams? Yuzuha is still a strong support, as the anomaly she applies can be quite helpful. For example, she can maintain solid uptime on burn for Soldier 11's Infernal Metal drive set bonus, while also providing Soldier 11 the massive 1200 attack buff and a decent amount of bonus damage as well. Yuzuha can also provide a lot of additional assaults for Nekomata's passive, as well as for anyone using the Fang Metal drive set or the Thunder Metal drive set, or even the Chaotic Metal drive sets. Overall though, I personally prefer Astra Yao for non-anomaly teams, but as we can see, even though Yuzuha's passive isn't active for those non-anomaly teams, the buffs she provides are still very substantial. One last honorable mention is Yishuan, as Yuzuha will help apply Auric Ink, and thus Yishuan will get a bit more adrenaline from the additional Auric Ink corrosions. But overall, Yishuan doesn't really benefit that much from the attack buff provided by Yuzuha, and Jufufu is definitely much more preferred for Yishuan, but Yuzuha is still a viable option. As we can see, being an S-rank support agent, Yuzuha is incredibly universal, excelling in anomaly-related teams and being quite usable in other teams as well. Okay, I've got a couple quick showcases, with the very first one being an M0U1 team, or at least the Tanuki and the Vampire are both at M0U1, although Piper, the A-rank agent, is at M6U5, or U5, you know, the Roaring Ride for her signature A-rank Wenjin. So yeah, this team, it feels pretty good, especially considering that Piper is basically the main DPS slash carry of this team. Although kind of, I mean, the blooms probably do just as much damage as Piper does. But one thing really neat about Piper is that she is able to spend a lot of the feathers for Vivian at a pretty fast rate, especially in comparison to a lot of other characters. So while the blooms may not be like as impressive as, like, I don't know, like Jane's Assault, you'll see a lot of them, especially if you're able to keep up with feather generation through like defensive assists and other abilities as well. So honestly, Piper has never felt better than now to use, in my opinion. And Piper, I mean, just look at that. These are Piper damage related numbers. You can just see all those assaults and disorders and the blooms on the screen, just doing massive, massive damage numbers, considering, you know, what kind of team we're running here. So she feels absolutely fantastic as an A-rank agent. And if you guys want some more showcases from myself, I did a couple in the previous early access showcase. Link to that video will be down below. And of course, there are many other content creators with many more showcases than this. So yeah, this is just a couple anecdotal runs that I did myself, and I am absolutely sure that this specific team with this setup can do much better in this fight, especially considering the buff for this fight is, you know, a pretty significant one for physical damage, which is why Piper and Jane, you know, are doing pretty well with this. They have like a specific buff where they gain another 20% additional physical damage. So yeah, me yapping a lot, but basically, I mean, you know, Yuzuha definitely feels like one of the closer to must-pull characters, especially if you have a lot of Anomaly agents and you like using Anomaly teams. And in fact, she's perfectly solid in non-Anomaly teams as well. So she's kind of become like another Astro Yao. And, you know, considering how, you know, useful these kind of support agents are, I personally think Yuzuha feels incredible. And especially if we get more Anomaly agents in the future, you know, we can expect Yuzuha to continue to be a great pull. But hey, you know, it's really hard to say when it comes to this stuff. So yeah, I'm just a modest clear with that. Now, what if though you got the massive Tanuki scrotum buff and you gain a lot of good luck and prosperity? Well, now you have M6U5. We can actually see that when she uses her EX special, she actually triggered a free chain against the enemy, which makes this a really interesting mechanic. And again, it was really difficult for me to kind of theorycraft. And here I'm going to go for the M6 hold charge shot thing, where she just shoots a bunch of those additional things. And now the disorder multiplier is also higher. So yeah, a very interesting setup with her. And of course, this is literally just me mashing buttons with this team. No min-maxing at all with this M6U5 team, but I want to give it a quick try because, hey, you know, I've got access to all this on the media server, so I may as well go ahead and test it out for you guys. And you guys are going to see some pretty insane numbers dealt by this team. I mean, you can just see just casual 1 million of blooms. The enemy's not even stunned. And we're going for another crazy charge attack. I mean, just look at those disorders and the blooms. It's so interesting. Her Mindscape 6. But yeah, anyway, I don't recommend spending that much money unless obviously you have the disposable income or whatever, you know, that you have for doing this. And right here in this stun window, we can see, I believe after Jane's ultimate, you'll see some pretty insane disorder numbers and stuff. I mean, look at that. Was it 3.8 million a bloom even? 4 million a bloom. I mean, of course, that is Vivian, but she is definitely, you know, benefiting from the buffs that Yuzuha is providing. Although, to be completely fair, the buffs that Yuzuha provides definitely don't scale like, you know, as well as you might expect with money. But there are just a lot of other interesting utility that Yuzuha provides to the team through her Mindscape. Especially Mindscape 2 is going to be a really interesting one. I think a lot of people are going to be able to do a lot of interesting things with it. But of course, you know, we're going to have to let some more creative members of the community figure that stuff out. But yeah, a crazy team. Of course, you know, once you spend a lot of money, you can expect a lot of power. But, you know, obviously I don't really recommend spending this much money for this much power. Just not really worth it. But yeah, hey, it's a lot of fun at least to watch and to see and to, you know, try out a couple times. And yeah, overall, I think that Yuzuha is a fantastic support agent. And if you like Anomaly teams, it's going to be really hard to go wrong with pulling her. So, yep. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.